This is Replicate This PSD edition exercise number 5, also known as Tiny Happy Valley. We are going to make Provo, or rather BOU campus and its surroundings look tiny, like they're a little diorama inside of a shoebox, rather than this majestic, large aerial photo. First, what we need to do, now I've already gotten mini-byu.jpg open in Photoshop. We're going to do a couple things in this. We're going to learn about a new kind of gradient, we're going to learn about what's called quick mask mode, and we're going to learn about a new effect, a lens blur effect that very closely simulates the tilt shift lens effect that you may have seen on YouTube or in Vimeo that makes things look very small. Before we get into quick mask mode though, let me show you, I'm going to make another layer on top of our background here. Let me show you what I'm meaning to do with the gradient tool. If we grab the gradient, that is G, we will see that by default Photoshop places the gradient as a foreground to background gradient, and it also defaults to linear gradient. What we're going to use today is what's called a reflected gradient or a bar gradient, and I'm going to give you an example of what that's going to do. Now keep in mind that foreground is black, background is white. What happens when I just click and drag with this tool? Basically starts with black, goes to pure white, and then gradients down to black again. And if I just make a short little line like that, it makes what looks like a metal bar, hence the name bar gradient. And we could do this all day if we wanted to, but what we're going to do is we're probably going to make a gradient that looks a little bit like this. It doesn't matter whether you drag up or down, but the center of the gradient is going to be where you start clicking and dragging, and the end of it is going to be where you let go. So that is what a reflected or a bar gradient looks like. We do not need that layer, so I'm going to delete it. Yes, delete. And let's do what's called quick mask mode. Let's click the quick mask mode button right here. As you can see, it looks like the layer mask button, but don't be confused, it is not. Let's make sure we have our gradient tool selected, and we want all of campus to look tiny, so I'm going to start in the middle of this block of campus, right on the library about, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag up because I want this to be a big soft gradient, and about right there. So quick mask mode basically tints everything red, a translucent red, that is going to not be included in the selection. So I guess we could say that red is the equivalent of black on a layer mask thumbnail. So as you can see, campus shows through the area of the gradient where we do not have any quick mask. Let's click the quick mask mode button again, and we will see that what actually happened there is we were making a very soft edged selection that looks like a hard rectangle, but it's actually very soft. Okay, if I were to fill this with black, it would look like that, all right? Let's undo that, and instead, let's fill, instead of campus, we don't want campus to be blurry, we want everything outside of campus to be blurry, simulating the extreme depth of field that we sometimes see in this small scale photography. So let's go to Select Inverse so that we can apply a blur to everything outside of campus. And let's go to Filter, Blur, Lens Blur, which very closely simulates what actual camera lenses do. And that looks pretty good, doesn't it? It looks like there's just a very sharp point of focus here. All of a sudden, everything looks tiny. There's a lot of options over here that we don't actually need to mess with. Probably the most important one is the radius here under iris, but that's way too much depth of field. We do not have that fast of a lens for this. Let's take it back to the default 20. You could even change the shape of the iris. If you're familiar with the way that analog cameras work, or any camera lens for that matter, the iris has these little blades that close down to let in or not let in light. And I believe the default is a hexagon. That's what these mean. Anyway, you can have octagon, you can have triangles, squares, all that. Let's click OK. And let's Command D to deselect. Now we've got a pretty tiny looking image here already, but we need to do one more step, which is to add oops, that's a layer mask. Let's add an adjustment layer of hue and saturation. Because I don't know if you've noticed in macro or tiny scale photography or photography of dioramas that the saturation, the color level is a little bit more saturated. So let's pump up our saturation just a tiny bit there. And voila, we have what looks to be a tiny campus. Doesn't it look tiny? Doesn't it look like that little tree's made out of broccoli? Some broccoli bunches over here. Maybe these are made out of peas. Who knows? Let's all have a moment of silence for Campus Drive, which no longer exists. And I think I'm going to stop talking now because that's all you need to know. Okay, bye.